Welcome to another episode of Unraveling Life's Knots. Thank you for joining us. So if you could please start off by introducing yourself and sharing a bit about your background.
Thanks. It's great to be here. My name's John Montgomery. I've been a mediator with QuickMix since about 2016, right after I retired from about 35 years with the U.S. State Department. I was a diplomat, mostly in Africa and the Middle East. And I came to this through the retirement program that the state offers. I heard a mediator speak and said, that sounds like something I should have known 35 years ago. And so I took the 40-hour course and said, yep, these are important skills. And was invited to come join QuickMix and did a couple of observations and then launched into my first mediation in 2016.
Wonderful. So obviously you've developed quite a bit of experience over the years. So how would you say, as you already shared your background, how would you say that your own life journey has influenced the way that you have approached mediation?
I've seen over and over again in international relations the same thing that happens in human relations, which is there are conflicts that arise frequently based on a lack of understanding of the other person's point of view. That can be very acute in dealing with foreign cultures, which is why we have diplomats to learn about foreign cultures and their language. But it can be about all sorts of other issues. You can resolve them violently, or you can talk about it. And most of the time we talk about it, and most of the issues go away through negotiation, mediation, conciliation. And so I see it as a working both on the macro global level and the micro person-to-person level.
Sure. And so could you share, since like I already mentioned earlier, and how you shared with us that you began in 2016, could you be able to share with us a memorable experience from your early days as a mediator?
Yeah, one of my first cases, in fact, no, I think the first one I did by myself, was presented to me as a business case. I thought, great, a business case. We won't get into a lot of touchy-feely emotional stuff. It'll be kind of cut and dried. Somebody needs money. Somebody owes money. We'll work it out. And sure enough, it was two partners running a business. But these two partners had been romantic partners even as they were setting up their business. But the romance ended, and reading between the lines, ended badly because there was still a lot of issues hanging over their business relationship that was a result of their personal relationship. We could see, my co-mediator and I, that there was a lot of passive aggression. There were things going on that where they were almost self-sabotaging or sabotaging the business, which was really taking off. And I thought, great, just when I was hoping to start out with a simple one, there's all this stuff going on. And we have to be very careful as mediators that we're not family counselors and couples counselors. We're not trained for that, and we'd be practicing without a license if we tried. So what we came to was a set of rules of the road that the two of them could work by. I'll show up by work no later than 10 o'clock, and I'll stay, a minimum of 6 hours or something, and we will communicate, or I'll leave you messages or whatever, so that they could get along, even without trying to address the underlying issue of their unresolved personal relationship. They could carry on their business one.
Sure. I think it's interesting to see how, in different ways, but all around like the same topic, how, kind of how you mentioned, this being your first case, how you interpreted business that, we're going to probably more than likely avoid emotions and whatnot, but you were completely taken away when the actual conflict at hand was discussed when you finally got there. So, I've had previous mediators share with me that, you have to keep an open mind because you never know what's going to walk through the door, and you really never know what's going to be exchanged at the table. So definitely, a perfect example of that. One might interpret it one way, but when you finally get down to it, it's something completely different. And that even happens as well because since we're not really there providing solutions directly, it's also going to happen with the solution. So obviously maintaining an open mind for what could come is important from a mediator standpoint. So moving forward, how would you personally measure the success of a mediation process beyond, the resolution of an immediate dispute?
It's really about the partners coming away, the partners in the conflict, maybe partners not the right word, participants in the conflict, to understand two things. The process that you can use to get to a solution, and we demonstrate that, even if they don't come to a solution, they might use it in another situation, or they may carry on. I've seen cases that were resolved after we declared an impasse and said, this is it, we can't go any further, and then hear from the participants later that they did resolve it using the skills that they had developed in the mediation. The other thing is, it's very fundamental to mediation, is actually hearing for the first time the other person's point of view. They think they understand where the other person is coming from because they've both been parties to this conflict. But you never really walk a mile in the other one's shoes. But what we do is ask each participant to describe the conflict to us, a neutral third party, without the other person interjecting. Just let them listen and hear that person tell the story to a third person. And that is extremely eye-opening. I think a lot of mediations get resolved right there at the beginning, even though there's a lot more to be done. The groundwork for a solution is laid when they go, oh, that's why they were doing that, or that's what they thought I was up to, or that's the misunderstanding, and then everything else can flow from there. So understanding the other person's point of view makes it a successful mediation.
Sure, I think that's all just a part of the processes, or one of the, what I would say, many processes of mediation. The expression of the emotions, and then finally dissecting and getting down to the points of what each participant or each party involved is really looking for. What are they hoping to achieve, and how can they work their way to either some sort of compromise or whatever form of solution that they might seem the best for themselves. But it's all different gears just working towards that.
Right.
So what changes have you observed in individuals or communities as a result of successful mediation? Obviously sometimes mediations can last over multiple sessions. So what progressions have you seen in individuals when it comes to, them working through these different mediations?
Right. Sometimes it's real obvious, the body language. I'm sitting here with my arms crossed. It's usually a sign that I'm resisting what you're telling me. And like I say, in that first phase of the mediation where you hear each person tell their story, sometimes at that point or later on, their body language will kind of relax and they'll move their arms and open up, and you can see that they're absorbing and not just deflecting what they're hearing. And that can be a powerful sign that the message is getting through, that a solution is possible, that they're hearing each other.
Sure. Definitely, I would say that is one of the many factors in human nature when it comes to conflict, or just a reactionary body language being a huge tell as far as how people are internally feeling towards something. So would you be able to share with us a powerful story from your mediation experiences that has stayed with you over the years?
It's kind of, let's see, there was the case I said where there was, we thought there was an impasse and they resolved it. What happened there was neighbors were arguing over the back fence and sort of, impinging on the other person's right to privacy. And it got to the point where one side daughter, who was 9 or 10, apparently this happened, outside the mediation back home, just started crying when the conflict resumed, and it was that crying that got them, that finally melted the ice. The other party finally recognized the pain that he was imposing on his neighbors by his behaviors, and all the discussion, I think, in the mediation, suddenly it's when the Grinch finally hears, the message, and how the Grinch stole Christmas, suddenly it all came shining through. Mm-hmm. And he went over and sat in their kitchen and talked to the mother and talked to the girl, and boom, resolution.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think it's always interesting on the varying conflicts I come across, what it is that, spreads the clouds open and allows the sunshine to come through and really help people see the potential solutions that are really there right in front of them. Because completely normal for when conflict is in front of us to, there to be levels of blockage, and from either side or from both sides, or, however many parties are involved. Again, going back to, just the different processes that happen when it comes to conflict and conflict resolution, where we work our way through all the different, peeling at the orange in a way, in order to actually reach the solution. So how have your own experiences and kind of in a way what we've been talking about, the challenges, shaped the advice that you would offer to aspiring mediators?
Well, one thing is, there's a lot of talk on college campuses now about how colleges should really be trade schools, and everybody should learn, computer science or something, and what are considered the softer subjects, like the humanities, are actually being phased out of some schools. But I was a lit major in college, and I found it was hugely advantageous throughout my career. As a diplomat, a lot of it is communicating, and you need to communicate with the host country. You need to communicate back with Washington. They're in different time zones and a different worldview, and you've got to be able to bridge that gap. And learning how to write and think and express yourself with an idea of how it's going to be heard from the other side is very powerful. And I've also come to find that mediations are like a novel, probably a book on tape, because you're listening rather than reading, but you're hearing a story, and you're listening, but you're also listening for the subtext that this person is saying this, but what do they mean? It seems like they have certain values that are very important to them that aren't being respected or aren't being acknowledged, and so you're constantly trying to drill down, like like an active reader should when they're reading a good story, is what is the narrator saying? What are the characters really up to? What they're telling us is only half the story. And being able to listen actively, like reading actively, really makes you a better mediator.
Definitely. And honestly, in a way, like what you mentioned early on with the fact that part of your career and, having to navigate the communication between, different foreign parties, reminds me of back in college when I was a communications major, where we also did similar work around the similar topic in regards to communication in different environments when it comes to cross-culture communication. So if you could go back and give yourself advice when you were just starting out as a mediator, what would it be based on your journey so far?
Keep your mouth shut. Listening is 99% of mediation. There's an overwhelming tendency, and I'll pick on men because they're easy to pick on. Men are particularly guilty of saying, well, why don't you just do this? Deborah Tannen, a great sociologist, linguist at Georgetown, has written a number of books about men and women, mothers and daughters in conversation. And one of the great insights from one of her books is men won't listen sympathetically. If a wife comes home with a story about a bad day at the office, the husband can't just sit there and say, "Gosh, honey, that's terrible. Here, let me make dinner." They have to say, "Well, why didn't you stand up to the boss? And why didn't you do this? And why, what you should do tomorrow is go in and say, blah, blah." They always need to be solving the problem for the other person. Margaret Cho, the great comedian, she has a line in one of her routines about her, the way to torture her father would be to chain him to a wall, stand in front of him, and fold up a map wrong. Because he would just want to come out and say, "No, do it like this, do it like this," and not being able to do that is very hard for certain personality types, and I'm one of them. And so I know that I just need to listen, let them find their path. You can gently ask questions. Well, what about? Have you considered, or not even that, but what other options are out there? And move them along, but the answers have to be theirs, not yours.
Definitely. I mean, a very important principle, or many different important principles that you mentioned in terms of like how mediation really plays out. Already, like you said, starting off, keeping our opinions to ourselves and not sharing them, and 100% a principle of mediation. Not only because of the fact that we want to be neutral throughout all conflicts, but also the fact that we want to give people the power, the ones involved. Like, you're in control, you're here because you and all the parties involved are seeking solution, hopefully. So, you're here to do the hard work to get there. And, rightfully so, it's their solution to own for them, coming here and going out of the way to actually put themselves in mediation, because not everyone will do it's already an important step that they're here.
Right, it's not just a feel-good exercise that they feel ownership. It's crucial to the success because the mediation doesn't end when you walk out of the room. Usually people have to do stuff in the future to carry out their agreement. And if the agreement came from somebody else, the likelihood that they're going to follow through goes way down. Whereas if it's an idea they came up with, the likelihood that they will actually follow through and carry it out goes way up. So this is not just an exercise in empowerment or something. It's a practical way to get the deal done.
Definitely, I completely agree. Well, John, once again, I want to thank you again for joining us another episode of Unraveling Life's Knots. You've shared some great stories with us today and a lot of wonderful experience, and we're glad to have had you join us, especially with such a long time experience that you've had. So we're really appreciative, and we hope to look forward to speaking to you once again in the future.
Always a pleasure. Thanks a lot.